You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
I'm JT.
And the purpose of this video is to talk about the Jehovah's Witnesses and the number one reason you can't trust their Bible, part 2. Well, JT, we did video number 1. We got lots of positive feedback. We also got some pushback. The pushback was about specific examples that basically spoke to this issue.
Yeah.
We're going to have some footage coming up that we're going to share from our special correspondent, Mark Martin. But in the meantime, talk to us about what you know to be true.
Yeah, we're going to look at how the Watchtower uses, and this is something that we've discussed before, is their writing style. The Watchtower writers have a very unique writing style. It's oftentimes very fluid. It can change and go back and forth as needed. And so if you don't know what the previous statements were, you would have no idea. And that's what Mark is going to point out in our video, is just some examples of how the Watchtower will often use brackets. We touched on something very similar in the video we did on Is Jesus Your Mediator?
Yes.
Where how the Watchtower actually inserted during the Watchtower study that the witnesses had all around the world in reference to the statement about Jesus being your mediator. And they actually put their own comments in. And it's interesting because those comments were not in the actual scripture, but they wanted you to come at a certain conclusion, so they just inserted them. And this goes back to what we had spoke about before. In fact, Mark had mentioned this too. The Bible says in the book of Revelation, don't add nothing, don't take nothing away. So that's one of the things we're going to see in the video that Mark has put for us.
Outstanding. So let's go to our special correspondent, Mark Martin, who's going to connect a couple of dots as it relates to specific examples in terms of the number one reason you can't trust the Jehovah's Witness Bible. Mark, take it away.
Brother JT, Brother Daniel, Sister Lady C, thank you for having me back. We're covering the topic, Is the New World Translation Reliable? I want to begin by reading a verse, and this is from the 2013 edition of the New World Translation, Revelation 22:18 and 19. It says, I am bearing witness to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this scroll. If anyone makes an addition to these things, God will add to him the plagues that are written in this scroll. And if anyone takes anything away from the words of the scroll of this prophecy, God will take his portion away from the trees of life and out of the holy city, things that are written about in this scroll. So a lot of people might attribute this just to Revelation, but if we believe that all Scripture is inspired of God, it has to apply to the whole Bible. So we want to be careful when translating things. So again, our question, is the New World Translation reliable? I want you to notice that in the Old New World Translation, 1984 Reference Edition, they make it clear that if a word is bracketed, if it's in brackets, it's been added for meaning to help you to understand it. And I don't have a problem with this as long as we know that those words are bracketed. But here's the interesting thing. When I look at the Kingdom Interlinear, this is very interesting. This is a Greek translation. This is a Watchtower publication that they put together. On the left side, you have it in Greek, and on the right side, you'll notice it's the New World Translation. And here's what it says. If you notice that in the box there on the top left, you'll notice that it says all things, and then below it, all things, and below that, all things have been created, it says. And then in the right side, speaking about Jesus, it says, by him all other things. And then in the next verse down below, it says, all other things have been created through him and for him. Also, he is before all other things, and by means of him, all other things were made to exist. So if you notice there, the word other was added. It was added to the text, which is actually for their own doctrine. It makes them be able to say that Jesus was created. But where in the Bible do we find that Jesus was created? We find that he was begotten, but not created. Now I want you to notice in the 2013 edition, the same verse, you'll notice that it says all other things, and those all other things are not in brackets. So what have they done? They've taken the meaning, showing you that these words were added, and now they're driving their doctrine home without telling you that this word was added. If you know it's added, you can make a decision for yourself. Am I accepting this or not? but now they're making it a part of the actual text. The interesting thing about it is when we look at that text, all other things, and we go to John chapter 1 and we look at verse 3, it's interesting that we have the same Greek word on the left, but on the right side they didn't put other things. So as we look through this, let's move along to the first New World Translation, 1950. Notice Hebrews chapter 1, verse 6. They actually let this slide by somehow back in 1950. It says, "Let all of God's angels worship Him." That's talking about Jesus. And you notice it's worship. It's worship Him. And then if you look at the New World Translation, the new one, on the left side, it says, "Let all of God's angels do obeisance to Him." So on the left you have the 2013, on the right you have the 1950, and it remained that way until 1969, and they had a revision. But you'll see in the 1984 translation it uses the word obeisance. Now, let's move along. If we look at Revelation chapter 4, you'll notice this word upon. And why am I picking these words? Well, notice there, I'm going to highlight it in red. This word upon, when you look at it, it's a Greek word. I put the Greek word on the left side. And when you look at it on the right side in the New World Translation, each time here in Revelation chapter 4 where it's used, they use the word upon. But when it comes to one of their major doctrines, I want you to notice what they do in the very next chapter. It's the same exact Greek word that says upon, and what have they done? They've talked about these kings ruling over the earth, and this fits with their two-class doctrine. You've got an earthly class and a heavenly class. So they've had to change the word to maintain their teaching. This is not found in the text at all when you look at the Greek language, and their own publication shows that very clearly. I want you to notice there are other translations that use on or upon the earth. And none of these translations that you see listed there say over the earth. And then there are more translations, on or upon the earth. None of these translations say on or over the earth, rather. So as we move through and we look at this, we keep going. In John chapter 14, verses 10 and 11, you'll notice I underlined and highlighted union with. Now these words were added to the text. Those words do not exist in the Greek. So when it says, "I am in union with the Father and the Father is in union with me," that in union doesn't belong. It should read, "I am in the Father and the Father is in me." So they've added this "in union with." And you might say, well, why is that important? We can talk about that another time. And we continue on here. If you notice, in 1984, they had a footnote in the translation that said, "in union with me." They say, or in me. So they're admitting in the 1984 translation footnote that union with doesn't belong there. And they tried to justify this. They also put the divine name in places in the New Testament where it doesn't belong. Granted, there are places in the New Testament where it does belong. For example, when they're quoting from the Old Testament and they're reading from Isaiah or the Psalms and it uses the word Jehovah, you can put it there in the New Testament. But overall, it does not belong in the New Testament unless they're quoting the Old Testament. Also in Mark chapter 16, you will notice, if you look at that Bible, you will notice that in the 1984 edition, you have a short conclusion after Mark chapter 16, verse 8, and you have a long conclusion after Mark 16, verse 8. What they've done in the new translation is completely removed it. The Bible ends at Mark chapter 16, verse 8. So are they taking away from the prophecy of the scroll? Absolutely. They're removing something that wasn't there. Before, at least they left it up to you. Which one of these conclusions do you want to use? Because they are in some manuscripts. You get to make the choice. By taking that choice from you, it shows me that there's a form of an agenda there. Next, when we look at the New World Translation, the 2013 edition, I want you to notice this slide. It shows there a letter from the governing body when it's giving the review or the contents, review of the contents that's in that chapter or in that book. Now, nowhere does this term governing body exist in the Bible. They're putting their spin on it. And this is just a subtle way of them trying to show that there was a governing body in the first century. The Bible doesn't say that. This is a corporate term. Once again, it's very subtle, but it's right there in the very front of their Bible when they're trying to make their agenda. So the question that we're answering is the New World Translation reliable? I want to go back to the text that we opened with. Keeping this in mind, I am bearing witness to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this scroll. If anyone makes an addition to those things, God will add to him the plagues that are written in this scroll. And if anyone takes anything away from the words of the scroll of this prophecy, God will take his portion away from the trees of life and out of the holy city, things that are written about in this scroll. So I really feel bad that these brothers that have translated this, they're going to pay the price eventually. It's a sad thing. The point is, they have changed it. They have added to and they have taken away from God's holy word. They've changed it in several places to meet their own needs. So, brothers and sisters, Lady C, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you letting me be a part of your ministry. And I hope everything goes well.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you. JT, so based on the evidence that we've seen,
Yes.
our first video and this video, from my standpoint, I mean, this is the central question, because if the Jehovah's Witness Bible isn't accurate, then everything else that comes thereafter is inaccurate.
Yeah, it's often referred to as the fruit from the poisonous tree. Once you start going down the road of making changes to something that's not there, adding things in, taking things out, you end up where you are with something that has serious questions on it. And so the bottom line is, this is just another example of why an individual needs to take the time to ask serious critical questions and make serious critical examinations, like many people have done.
For me, I had mistaken the organization's sincerity for accuracy. My question to you is, have you done the same? Mistaken sincerity for accuracy. The only test for truth is truth. The Bereans were complimented because they did their homework. If you saw the previous videos, they double-clicked. They Googled. It's time for you to Google to get the facts, to do the homework. Your life is on the line, your soul is on the line, and your family needs you. Take this video, share it with others that need to see this video. Share a video, change a life, save a life. JT?
Do your homework.
Daniel. See you on the next video.
Hey, this is Lady C. Thank you for tuning in to The Critical Thought. We appreciate having you in our audience. Not only that, but we invite you to subscribe to our channel and be sure to hit that bell so that you can receive notifications when we upload new content. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you for being in our audience.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.